sort of rise up and they try and go after the Jewish people, then this is what causes Hashem to get involved and nullify them. Because even though the tzaddikim are not powerful enough to combat Tohu by themselves, but when they even think about doing something negative to the Jews, we said Hashem connects their bad thought to their deed, considers it as though it's done, and then He nullifies them. So we said that basically, since they're trying to stop us from doing mitzvahs, this itself should bring down the justice to stop them from being able to stop us. Right? Since the whole purpose of the world is basically to do Torah mitzvahs, and they're trying to stop us from doing Torah mitzvahs, din hu she's batli b'mteim. It's the din. In other words, it's the justice that they should be nullified before us. Because the Ummos HaOlam, they are receiving their life force from Chitzonius, and the Bnei Yisrael and Torah mitzvahs receive their life force from Panemius. This is what we said yesterday. We spoke about this a lot. That basically their whole idea of Chitzonius and Panemius in this inyan is, we spoke about that the Panemius comes from the word face, that Hashem shines His face upon us. And why does He shine His face upon us? Because what is the face? It's like a favoring, right? That He favors us. And why does He favor us? Primarily, He says, how can I not favor them when they favored me? We talked about this idea that He commanded us to make an after blessing with a kabetza, with a larger size, and we decided we're going to do it even with a smaller size, whatever. It's like a favoring.
Consonants is favoring?
In this, the face, right? Yisa panim, basically, it has like a lot of different meanings in Hebrew. That's hard to translate, but the word face also means panemius, and it also means to favor.
Because I don't know what consonants means, and I'm just wondering.
So now you know.
So now,
Well, first of all, I'm saying the word is panav, right? So the word panav, I'm saying it has three different connotations. Panav, just pasha, means face, which means that's where the word countenance comes from. Like your countenance of your face is like what you show somebody. But panav also comes from the word panemius, which means the inwardness. And then we're saying yisa panav. There's this notion of favoring, basically like usually it's like it could be like an unjust level of favor. Like if you pay off a judge, he'll favor you, you know. But this is what I said. Where Hashem is like sort of drawn towards us. You got one, Levi? You made a copy? Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone needs a copy? You have an extra one there? Here you go. Okay, so that's the whole idea, is that really they should be nullified before us because they come from a chitzonius standpoint, an external place, and we're coming from panemius, again, this idea of yisa panim, of a favored place. And we're saying that even though we are in Gullus, standing, so to speak, merachok, right? Because there's this notion of these two pasukim that we were dealing with. One is that Lama Hashem tamod berachok, why Hashem are you standing from a distance? And one is Hineni Moshiach merachok, I'm going to save you from a distance. So we say how these two things go together. The distance, Hashem, why are you standing from a distance, is the Indian of Gullus. And that's the Indian of, basically when Hashem is so far away from us, then it's like it doesn't matter the difference between good and bad. There's a very similar idea that we talked about in the previous Maimer about the Goral, the lottery. And when Hashem has removed Himself from us, He basically goes out of the justice system, and then nothing matters anymore, essentially. And so that's where it's sort of like Esav and Yaakov are like brothers. There's no distinction between the two, and on the contrary, they can get seemingly more of a hashpah into the world than we can. And this basically is the idea of going up into the Or Ein Sof, where it's like infinite, and when it's infinite, there's no significance to any particular detail over another one, right? That's the idea. So Hashem is standing mirachok, from a distance at this level, and therefore that's what also gives them the strength to overcome us. On the other hand, it says, I'm going to Moshiecha mirachok, I'm going to save you from a distance. And why is that? Because even in a distant place, so to speak, there's also the difference between chitzonius and panemius. Externally, the Or Ein Sof, that's what we wrapped it up last time. We got David all excited there. The Or Ein Sof itself is only a ray of the essence. So even though we go into this very, very high place, you get to the Or Ein Sof, which is infinite, which therefore gives them a certain leg up, the negative forces over us. But the truth of the matter is, that's not really the essence of Hashem. And this sort of, who cares, dark and light is all the same, which in principle is a very high place, but it leads to negativity coming into the world. That itself is not the true Hashem, right? So the revelation of Hashem's infinite light, in a certain sense, is not really the true essence of Him. It's just a ray of Him, and therefore it's an external ray of Him. It's not the real point of the matter. And therefore, they who receive from that level, they are receiving and nourishing from the chitzonius level of Hashem, and therefore we who receive from the panemius, which is like His real choice and His essence, we should be able to just knock them off, because panemius always basically undoes the chitzonius, because the chitzonius is just a mere ray of the panemius. That's what we said yesterday. I don't know if it. I'm getting a lot of blank looks from the crowd there, but l'chaim to you guys. Is anyone somewhat following this?
Where are we, like, actually?
Sfat Ira Kodesh. Okay. All right, so we're following this. So let's just take it from who Inyan. Okay, so the line's going to start Hayeshua. It's right in the middle of the page. 134.
Is there any extra copies?
No, I don't have any.
There's a few.
Oh yeah, there are here some. The line starts Hayeshua, and this is the idea that I'm going to save you from a distance. What's the idea of the word save? Comes from the word Yoshua, comes from the word Shin Ayin Hey, 375 lights. The word Yoshua is the word Shin Ayin Hey in it, which represents these 375 lights of basically Ha'ares Panim, like shining Hashem's face, His countenance, His favor towards us, and that's the union of Panemius. Sheshayeches liYisrael dafka. So that we just went to the next line. That's which is connected to the Jewish people specifically. We're the only ones who have that level of accessing the Panemius. And then automatically, if you're going to access the Panemius, right? So something which is beyond the Or Ein Sof, where nothing matters, right? So then all of a sudden you access something beyond that, where something does matter. The Panemius, the innermost will of Hashem, is for the Jewish people. If that could be sort of opened up, then this whole infinite level of the Or Ein Sof, which they're drawing upon to hurt us, should be nullified. Even in a situation where they're still bearing the powerful lights of Tohu, as we said before, which means they haven't spit out all their holy sparks yet. It doesn't matter. The whole reason that they're stronger than us, right, is merely because of this Tohu and Tikkun scenario, where basically Tohu is infinite lights, which are higher than finite lights. So it's only when sort of the infinite is being praised as something stronger that it disables the finite people from Tohu to overcome it. And that whole scenario, when you look at it like that, is a chitzonius scenario. So when you access the Panemius again, then it doesn't matter how much stronger they are. Because the whole thing is by them is just a chitzonius. Vilu Yisrael Torah mitzvahs hem bechinas panemius. For the Jewish people and the Torah mitzvahs, this is the panemius. It comes ultimately from a higher source, is what it's saying. V'klalus ha'inyan bezeh, the general way of understanding this, the Tohu v'tikun nimshachim ma'ashemos saguma, that Tohu and Tikkun, as we've been discussing, are drawn from the names Sag and Ma. Yeah, everyone remembers that? Ach yeshno gam Av shelamayla mishnehem. But there's also this level of Av, which is the name above both of them.
I'm sorry, what? Did we say Sag and Ma yesterday? Because I don't remember what those are.
They're basically gematrias.
Okay.
of how to spell the name Yud Kei Vav Kei with the what we call the miluyim. So, for example, a Yud, it can just be a Yud. It could also be a Yud Vav Dalet, because you spell the word Yud.
Oh, I see.
So if you spell out the whole word Yud Kei Vav Kei, there's 4 different ways of spelling it, and these names are the gematrias. That's why they're like with parentheses in between. Sag is really 63, Ma is 45, and Av is 72.
I understand.
So we're saying that Tohu and this like sort of infinite level comes from Sag. Ma is Tikkun, and that's where basically, Tohu and Tikkun are coming from. But there's something higher than both of them, which is like what we're saying, this panemius level, which is Av, which is higher than both of them. And that's where we're drawing upon when we say, Hashem, save me from afar. That even when Hashem is, so to speak, far away, which means he goes up into a level of Tohu, right? Which means it's in a state of gullus, and the infinite powers, the fact, like infinity rules, and that there is no favoring at that level to one over the other. Certainly not the weak over the strong. So nonetheless, mirachok, from distant, Hashem will save us, because if we go a little bit higher than that, we'll get to a point where really all that is just chitzonius, and the real inner favoring is for the Jews. What's the difference between Sag and Av? Hurak b'miloy ha'os vav. It only is the only difference is with the miloy of the os vav. Sheb'shem Av hu b'yud vav. Okay, and the idea is that with the in the name Av, how do you spell vav? You spell it vav yud vav in the Shem Av, in the 72-letter name, right? You spell the vav of that name vav yud vav, right? Masha enkim b'shem Sag hu ba'alef. But when you have the name Sag, right, it's with an aleph, which means vav aleph vav. And that's the only difference between the spelling of those two, right? Which should come out that they're basically 9. They're 9 numbers apart from each other, which they are.
Vav aleph, vav aleph, vav.
Vav aleph vav, as opposed to a vav yud vav. So that's the only difference. That's why one is 72, one is 63. They're exactly 9 apart. Now that we've got that in there, we could just, an Avramel, maybe we'll take it outside. Do you mind? What's that? No, you don't have to apologize.
Did you hear it?
A little bit.
Did it sound good?
It sounds awesome. It was so good, I was listening to you more than myself, and that's the problem. Alright, so anyway,
It's beautiful.
from here, just because he's like basically giving us this little clue, we can know that, try and remember the difference between what all the different 4, right? So look at it like this. The Av is a Miloy Yud. Every chance you get to put a Yud, you put a Yud. So it's Yud Hey, it's Hey Yud, right? When you have a chance to spell Hey, you could spell Hey in 3 ways. Hey Aleph, Hey Yud, or Hey Hey. So in the Shem Av, the whole thing, every time you get a chance, it's Miloy Yud. So everything's Yud. In the Shem, we know that the Shem Sag is exactly the same as the Shem Av, except for the Vav, instead of having a Vav Yud Vav, it's Vav Aleph Vav. Go down one. What's the next name? Ma. It's called Miloy Aleph. Every chance you get to fill it in with an Aleph, you fill it in with an Aleph. Which means Hey Aleph. Right? Vav Aleph Vav. Those are basically your only 2 options. Where there's a difference. So the Shem Ma is connected with Aleph. The Shem Av is connected with Yud. That's what you fill in all times Yud. And the Shem Ban, I say just we stumbled onto this topic, might as well just know definitively at least once what the difference is. So the name Ban, there's a mimer, it's called about the Maras HaMachpelah, which means it's a doubled cave. We learned it together, I think. And the idea is that the Shem Ban is called the doubled name, which means every chance you get, you double the letter. It's kind of a simple one to remember. So Hey is Hey Hey, Vav is Vav Vav. That's basically how you come up with that final one. There's no, right? There's no
Which letter do you double?
You just double whatever the letter it is. So Yud is always the same.
Whatever the middle letter is, it's pronouncing it?
Yud, let me put it like this. Yud is always spelled the same way, every chance you get. Because there's only one way to spell Yud. Yud, Vav, Dalet. Right?
Okay.
The other three is, so it's Hey, right? Start with Hey. So there's three ways to spell Hey. Hey Aleph, and Hey Yud. So you spell, in the final name where you double all the letters, it's Hey. And then there's Vav, you could also spell in three ways. Vav, Aleph, Vav, Yud, Vav.
Yeah.
So you just double it, it's just Vav.
What do you mean, Vav?
Vav is also a way of spelling Vav. Vav,
Okay.
right? With nothing in between. So since we're in the final one, which is it's the Hey, everything is kuffel, it's doubled. So that's a good way to remember it. You just spell it with the double, you just double the letter. So it's Hey, Vav, Hey, for the final one.
Sag and
Av.
no, Sag and Ma, they're both using Aleph.
No, Sag is a jumbled one. The only one that's with an Aleph is the Vav. No, the letter Vav. But all the other ones is with a Yud.
What's Ban? How do you spell it?
That's the doubled one. Hey, Vav, Hey. Anyway, just because we stumbled onto it, but let's get to the real point of the matter, which is that the difference between Av and Sag, which again, Sag is like the power of the klippas, the Tohu. Av is like the ultimate panemius where we can undo them. The only difference in their spelling is one letter, which is a 9 gematria, which is the letter Vav. That in the Av it's spelled with a Yud, and in the Sag it's spelled with an Aleph. Shezeu ma shenemar be'esav lashon aluf. It's very kind of cool. We call them the Elufei Edom. If you look in the Torah, when it talks about the shattering of the sparks, it doesn't start talking about that openly in the Torah. It talks about the kingdom of Edom that was built up with Elufei Edom, right? Which is like, it's like a general.
Champion.
A champion, right? So the champions of Edom. So the idea is that all the time you see Esav's leadership, it's called the Aluf. And why is that? Because they come from Sag, Tohu, which is really Sag. And what's the Indian of Sag? It switches that Yud with an Aleph, the Aluf. So that's the whole secret of why they're called the Alufim. Yud. This is good for you, Aleph, to know a little bit more about the Aleph. So he says Yud Aleph Elufei Esav. There was 11 Elufei Esav. So the Aleph actually is in a certain sense, we're talking about the negative connotation of Aleph here is the truth. But of course Aleph is the first letter, it's the Indian of Anochi. But the Torah of Mashiach, it says the Torah we have, it starts with a base. The Torah of Mashiach starts with an Aleph. But we're not going to that, I'm just trying to make Aleph feel better. Anyway, so he says like this, that there's Yud Aleph Elufei Esav. How many champions of Esav were there? There was 11 of them. Specifically, and they're called aluf. So the aleph pops up 11 times. Hainu, what does that mean to say? Shemitzad shfiras hakelim. That when it comes to the shattering of the vessels, nafal mishem sag lamata, it fell from the name Sag, because that's where Sag was Tohu. That's where things shattered from. It fell below. Ba'ofen shel yeshus umetzius. Do you have a question?
No, just Sag.
Yep.
Is Ban mentioned?
Ban, we're not dealing with Ban right now.
Ban in this matter, okay.
Yeah, I just brought that in just to complete the concept.
Okay. What is that? Just to complete the concept. What is that
It's the
referring-
fourth name.
Okay.
Ab, Sagma, and Ban.
And it's referring to
Like Malchus, basically. Okay, so anyway, when the shattering of the vessels happened, it fell from the name Sag down below, but often shall Yeshus u'Metzius, right? So the whole idea of what is the shattering of the vessels is that Sag, which is this infinite level, Tohu again is not a bad thing up there, right? It's just in infinite lights which go in every direction at the same time. It's kind of awesome. But when that becomes a Metzius, when that falls into a state of Yeshus and Metzius, that's a big problem. Because if you're going to have something as a thing, then it can't simultaneously be everywhere and in the place of everything else. Right? So that's the fall. The notion of the fall is that when you take that energy, which is, if you're at a state of total bittul, and there's no attempt to try and be a Metzias. So no problem. You can be everywhere simultaneously while everything else is everywhere, because there's nothing getting in the way of that experience. But once you want to try and harness that into a self, which has its own boundaries, then that energy is extremely horrible. That's basically, then you want to overcome everybody's Metzias. Everybody else is in your way because you want to be everywhere. And so does everything else. So it's a chaos. Chaos in a world of order is a big problem.
Sorry, could you just define Metziut?
Metzius means like thingness, right? Yeshus we call it, like to be as opposed to not be. There's yesh and there's ayin. Ayin is like nothing, and we say the world is created something from nothing. So the something is the something, whatever it is, the thing, right?
Yeah.
And the nothing is basically a state of no thing.
Yes.
So when in the world of Tohu proper, it's everything that's there is in a state of no thing. And therefore it can be beautiful, wonderful chaos, which basically doesn't bother anybody because it's in a state of sort of, it hasn't like really manifested into self yet. And so therefore it's not sort of like they're not really killing each other. You know, you're not, because to try and put two things which are both want to be the king at the same time in the same place, so long as there's no like actual land that they're fighting over, they can. It's a theoretical thing. It's just like wondrous power, which is like sort of unrestrained power, which is not really hurting anybody. But once you try and fight over a finite piece of thing, then that unrestrained power, which each one goes to the end of the world to establish their needs, it becomes chaos, unattainable chaos. So this is basically what happens when it falls into down below into a state of Yeshus and Metzias, Shezeu Inyan Aluf. That's when it becomes the Aluf. It becomes literally, it manifests itself as the Esav's children. He says, V'ein ze kamo ha'os Aleph shebetorah. This is not like the Aleph of the Torah. Right? Sha'al derech zeh va'al derech zeh b'shem ma sheyesh bo kama alafim. Right? Let's not give Aleph a bad name, because the truth is the Aleph of the Torah is a very good thing. And also we say, for example, the Aleph from the word Anochi Hashem Elokecha, like we said, it's like the highest level of Torah. But also we see the Shem Ma, which we just discussed a second ago. How do you spell Shem Ma with filling ins with what? Aleph. No, that was the Shem Ban. Shema was the Aleph. Every time you get a chance to fill it in with Aleph, you fill it in with Aleph. So, and the Shema is the name of Tikkun. So clearly that's not a balagan maker, right? That's like this healer of the world. That's where all Torah and mitzvahs come from. So Aleph is not intrinsically bad. On the contrary, Aleph really is a good thing from the way it is in the Shema. It's perfection. Right? And he spells out the Shema for you there if you want to see what it looks like. Yud, right? The Yud is, as we said, always the Yud. And here you see it's Hey with an Aleph, Vav with an Aleph, and Hey with an Aleph. Sha'Aleph hu malashon Aleph cha-chochma Aleph cha-bina. Where in this capacity does the word Aleph come from? It comes from the word I will teach you chochma, I will teach you bina. There's a pasuk in Mishlei, I believe, that it says, I will Alepcha Chochma Alepcha Bina. I will teach you Chochma, I will teach you Bina. Chochma and Bina of Kedusha, right? Which means that I will, Aleph in that capacity simply means from the word like Ulpan, which Aleph means to teach, right? So I will teach you Chochma, I'll teach you Bina, meaning to say Chochma and Bina of Kedusha it's talking about. So Aleph, of course, can be a good thing. Al Yedam Nase Inyan Abitul. And basically, through Chochma and Bina is where the whole nature and notion of bittul comes from, of self-nullification, right? The mochin, the Chochma particularly, and the Bina as well, the mochin is what gives a bittul and now enables everything to nullify itself. How does that work? Because basically, when you get all excited and you get into your Metzias, the one thing that can ultimately calm you down is when you think things through and you take the other person's perspective. You're emotionally, you cannot take the other person's perspective. Everybody's emotion is basically flying high, feeling themselves. But that's the beauty of the mind dominates the heart. is that the intellect can create a bittul in your emotions. If you basically think things through, you can calm down your emotions and bring it to a bittul. So what gives the intellect that power of bittul? It comes from the aleph above that. Alephcha chokhmah, alephcha bina. I will aleph you chokhmah and bina. So this is a chokhmah and bina of kedusha, which they themselves are an agent of bittul, and they themselves receive it from the aleph which produces them. Right? The aleph in this capacity represents like the keser, who makes chokhmah and it makes bina, which is the ultimate level of bittul. But this is the bittul of kedusha. This is the aleph of kedusha. Masha'en kinaos aleph de b'shem sag. This is not the aleph of the name sag. That's not your aleph over there. Shemizeh nizhavu shfiras hakelim, alufe esav. From that aleph is what was. It came down from the yud of the shem av. It turned into this aleph, and basically that's what created the fall and created the 11 champions of Esav. Because from there is where the shfiras hakelim happened. Hu inyan shel yesh u'metzius. So I guess in that capacity, I don't know, he doesn't say here, but what the aleph represents is basically a tzimtzum, right? In other words, like basically breaking and bringing down that level to and trying to bring it out and trying to reveal it. But what happens when you're trying to reveal something infinite in a finite place? It basically breaks.
What's that word? Yeshut.
Yeshus. Yeah, like self. V'zeo shemitzad shem av shu biyud l'mayla ma'alef sheb'shem sag okay, so here v'zeo shemitzad shem av shu biyud, right? And this is what he's saying, that from the standpoint of the shem av, which has a yud in it, l'mayla mi'alef sheb'shem sag uma, which is higher than the aleph which is found in the name of sag and ma for that matter, because ma is all alephs. Sag has the one aleph. And this Av, which is a Yud, which is higher than both of them, which means higher than Tohu and Tikkun. Therefore, from that point, Nasa Hineni Moshiach Merachok. Therefore, you could be saved from afar, Lios Haduch Rashayim. So even though the Sa'ag, it could be in its full strength, if you reach up into the Av, it can take it out, even yet while it's in its full strength. And this is what we said, that even from a Rachok, from a standpoint of a distance, which the distance usually represents gullus, and usually represents the overpowering of the negative forces, mitzad the fact that darkness and light are equal. That's called mirachok, from a distance. Nonetheless, I could save you from a distance, because even further distance than that is the name Av, which has this yud instead of an aleph, and therefore it can overpower Tohu even in the midst of its great strength. That's the whole thing.
So Mordechai was able to tap into Av to over.
That's what it looks like, yeah. So we're going to now, this is the final oath, so we're going to basically get back to all of our questions that we had in the beginning, and the mushal with the bird on the side of the water and everything. Basically answer all the questions now. Okay, so he says, Al pi zeh, right? Every Hasidic Maimer is basically the same. You start with a bunch of questions, you go into Av, Sag, Ma, and Ban, and then according to this, you can understand. Al pi zeh yuvan Maimer ha-midrash. We can now understand the statement of the Midrash on the pasuk Vayivez be'einav, which was from the Megillah. We said there was two different times, one in the Torah and one in the Megillah, when it says he was disgraced. One is Haman was disgraced. He was disgraced to only wipe out Mordechai because he found out that he was from the Jews. He wanted to wipe out all the Jews. It was a disgrace for him to only take out Mordechai, chas v'shalom. And then once by Esav, it says V'yivez habachura, right? He disgraced the firstborn honor. So then the Midrash says Haman was a bezoi ben bezoi. He was a disgraced son of a disgraced. Because basically Esav was his great-great-grandfather, and therefore they both said bizoi, vayivez, so he's a disgraced son of a disgraced. Right?
He was from one of the 11 champions.
Yeah, that's right. Lahalan kasi vayivez Esav as a bechora, v'kan kasi vayivez be'einav. So, and he brings the Pesukim. Later on, in other words, or before, in the Torah it says he disgraced the firstborn. And here it says he was disgraceful in his eyes. Vayivakesh Haman lashmid es kol haYehudi. And therefore, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, chas v'shalom, not just Mordechai. He says, Dehine sibas atokef da Haman. The reason, the cause of the strength of Haman should be glal zeh she'ein Mordechai koreo mishtachav elo, that due to the fact that Mordechai did not want to bow down to him, lechein v'yivez beinav v'yivakesh Haman lashmid es kol hayudim. Therefore, it was a disgrace for him, and he wanted to seek out to destroy all the Jews. Right? Where did he get this strength from? Basically, this unbelievable arrogance that because one man didn't want to bow down to him, he felt it was within his right to destroy the whole people. Hine biglal shezekeno shel Mordechai Yaakov hishtachva lezekeno shel Haman Esav. We already said it's because his grandfather of Mordechai did bow down to the grandfather of Haman, which was Esav. Shetochana shel hishtachvezu. And what does that bowing down really mean? What does it come out to being? Huinin hakdima de Tohu. As we said before, it's the prefacing of Tohu before Tikkun. Shorsho shel Esav. Right? It's the prefacing of the root of Esav to the Shorsho shel Yaakov, to which higher than the source of Yaakov, which is Tikkun. Shezeu masha Esav hu abachor. And that's why Esav was the firstborn. Literally, he came out first because he was spiritually first. Kanal, as we said before. Vezeu omro bezoi ben bezoi, and that's why it says he was the disgraced son of a disgraced. L'halan kasiva yivez Esav es bechora v'kan kasiva yivez beinav yivakesh Haman lashmid es kol Yehudim. I'm just reading fast because he's repeating himself. Over there it says he was disgraced. He disgraced the firstborn. Here it says he was disgraced and he wanted to destroy all the Jews. Hainu, what does it mean? Shasiba de v'yivez beinav. The reason that he was disgraced in his eyes to only take it out on Mordechai alone, it's the same reason. It's because Esav flaunted or disgraced the firstborn. In other words, why? So in other words, we said these two statements on the surface of things, they don't seem to really have anything to. On the surface of these two things, these two statements don't seem to have anything to do with each other, except for the fact that they use the same word, vayives, right? But they're talking about mamash completely two different things. One, Haman is disgraced to only destroy Mordechai, and two, Esav is disgraced. He disgraced the firstborn. We're saying they're totally connected to each other because the power and the arrogance that Haman had to be disgraced, to the fact that this man won't bow down to him, and therefore he's going to take out a whole nation, came from the disgrace that Esav was the firstborn. And it was because Esav was the firstborn, he had this power to disgrace the firstborn if he wanted to or not. It was his to disgrace. This unbelievable power came down into a Haman who basically who could just take out an entire nation because his honor was damaged a little bit. So this is the connection between these two statements. They're actually 100% connected. The disgrace of Haman was a child of the disgrace of Esav, or that he could be disgraced because the firstborn was his. V'ad kedei kach, so much so, shu balabais al bechora lischarit aleha v'lamachras. Right. So what's the concept there? Is that he's the balabais, he's the owner of the firstborn, to have regret over it and to sell it. Right. Whatever it is, it's the point is that it's his. The fact that he disgraced it, right? It means that it's something which is intrinsically belongs to him, right? You can't disgrace something which is not your own to disgrace. Umamshich b'medrash. Okay, so that's how the medrash starts with this mushal of with this connection of the two of them, which we now understand. That basically this is what gave Haman his unbelievable power. So there's a Bezoi ben Bezoi is basically describing where Haman got all his strength from. And then the Midrash goes on with the mushal of the bird. And in short, again, just to remind ourselves, what's the mushal of the bird? The bird made a nest on the seashore, and the water came and washed it away. And he got angry at the shore, and he said, I'm not going to go away from here until the water becomes dry land and the land becomes water. So he did a silly thing, and he just put a little bit of water from his beak on the land, and he threw a little dirt into the water. And then basically it says his friend came over to him, and he said, you're basically what are you? You're a fool. What did you accomplish? You didn't do anything, right? So this is kind of like Haman. Basically, I'm going to go and basically change dry land into the water. Like he's going to change the rules of God's world and destroy the Jewish people. So he's a fool, basically. What are you going to accomplish at the end of the day? All your noise. So it's that Hashem is the friend, so to speak, of the bird. In this analogy, the friend of the bird is basically, so too Hashem comes over to Haman. So the friend of Haman is Hashem. And he says, fool, I couldn't even destroy the Jewish people, Hashem says. Because when I wanted to destroy them, Moshe stopped me. And here, you're going to try and destroy them. So the idea is that, but the question we're really focusing on, that whole thing, is that Hashem is called the friend in the analogy. And that was one of our questions at the beginning. Under what world are you living in that you can call Hashem the friend of Haman? Because in the analogy, which is everything's exact, it's an analogy from the Midrash, the friend of the bird is called a friend. Right? Va'amar lo, it says, right, Ba'chavera va'amar lo, this is all a quote from the Midrash. The friend comes and says to him, and then the Rabbi comes back in his own voice, Shenikra chavero kiviyach. It's called his friend, so to speak. So now we can understand. The kaven sheshorsho shel Esav hu b'tohu. Since Esav really comes from Tohu, l'chein nikra chaveru. Therefore, he's called his chaver. In other words, he's called the friend of Tohu. Ki za de Tikkun hu chavero shel za de Tohu. V'klalus olam hatohu. So who is this friend, basically, in the story? It's God. Remember, God has lots of different places that he hangs out there. This is God as he is in Tikkun. The friend is God of Tikkun.
What's Za?
Za is basically, it's called Zer Anpin. It refers to the word Zer Anpin, which means the little faces, which is basically it's like the Kabbalah language for the 7 spheros from Chesed to Malchus in the world of Atzilus. Okay? And there's Za of Tohu, which is an unusual phrase actually, but it's basically the 7 spheros in the world of Tohu. Right? The 7 lower spheros from Chesed to Malchus in Tohu. So when he's saying that it's his friend, what he's saying is that Tikkun basically came over to Tohu. Right? Tohu is the bird. Tikkun is the friend of the bird, which is basically this level of divinity, which is lower, but it's a friend of the bird. Because why are they friends? Because they're both basically in this realm of after the Tzimtzum. Right? They're both called Za. They're both like the 7 spheres. Just one is like sort of a more wild version, one is a fixed version. But in that capacity, Hashem could also be called the friend of Tohu, because they're like partners at that level. Right? Esav and Yaakov are like brothers. They're friends at that level. So Yaakov, that's what it means. Shaharei Za inyano midos. What's the inyan of Za in general? It represents midos. Right? The 7 emotional attributes. V'klalos ha'inyan de'olam ha'tohu hu zayin malachim. And in general, the world of Tohu is defined by midos. Right? It's the 7 primordial kings of Esav that fell. If you recall a minute ago, we talked about how Chochmah and Bina were like a bittul machine. Right? They're able to nullify the emotions. So when we say that the world of Tohu shattered, okay, what we really mean is that the 7 spheros of Tohu shattered. Because the 7 spheros is where the primary yeshus is found. Because in the emotional dimension is where it's very hard to come together. If someone's emotionally riled up and the other person's emotionally riled up, they could kill each other. It's only the intellect which theoretically, if it is able to affect them, it can nullify their emotions and quiet them down. So in general, when we talk about Tohu and the shattering of Tohu, we're talking about the emotional spheros of Tohu that shattered, not the intellectual ones. And therefore, in general, Tohu is called by this notion of 7 spheros. Because even though Tohu also has a Chochmah, Bina, and Das, those didn't break. Right? They didn't shatter. Vayamusu v'lo b'chokhmah, it says they died and not in chokhmah. There was a sort of preservation of the intellect, because the intellect does have a sense of bittul. There's no need for it to shatter. It can handle oppositions. So here we're saying, let's just finish the point.
Yeah.
Here we're saying that Za of Tikkun is the Midos of Tikkun, and Tohu in general is basically called by the name Midos, because the whole of Tohu is a Midos world. It's a world that only have Midos. So the 7 kings of Esav, which basically became the Kabbalistic source of the shattering of the vessels, there were 7 of them that broke. So therefore, there's a parallel to them and the world of Za of Tikkun, because they both have this number 7. They both are primarily discussing the Midos. Okay, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. Like, we're sort of throwing around this idea of the 7 Sfirot in Tohu, but like, I'm not quite sure I understand, like, how, like, what does that mean to say that Tohu has those 7, or even the 10 Sfirot, that they exist in Tohu? And it seems counterintuitive to me to Tohu, which, like, I translate in my mind as chaos, but maybe that's not the right, I don't know if that's the only translation or the right translation, but like to say that Midot are like the defining feature of chaos, like it seems like the opposite. Chaos is like, so I just don't understand exactly like how we could say that Tohu has like Midot, or that it has the 7 lower Sfirot.
Okay, so the answer is as follows. Midot means measurements, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good question that you have. In other words, if it's infinite lights in Tohu, then what measurements are there?
Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly it.
But here's the thing: what makes something chaos is not because it doesn't have measurements. It's if something truly has no measurements, it's not called chaos. It's called infinite. Right?
So.
Because there's no vessels whatsoever to talk about to try and limit it's just called Or Ein Sof.
Yeah.
It's only when you try to make measures out of something, but the measurements don't fit together. So if I'm going to try and fill this whole cup with water and then simultaneously fill the whole cup with oil or wine, so because each one is trying to fit into the same measurement, that's when it becomes chaos.
Got it.
So the idea is that there are spheros in Tohu, but take for example 2 spheros, right? 2 spheros, Chesed and Gevura. Chesed represents expansion, right? Gevura represents contraction. Okay, those are 2 different midos, like attributes that Hashem has.
Yeah.
So what would happen in the world of Tikkun? Let's look at the healthy midos. Is that each one wants to have a little bit of expression of itself. So the light comes out, and then it says, you know what? I'm going to leave a little room for the darkness, for the absence of light. So what do we call that? We'll call it a beam of light. A beam of light is a perfect, harmony between darkness and light. It's light, but it's not all light, right? It allows for a harnessing and a basically limitation of the light.
Yes.
But what happens if you want to have those 2 midos, Chesed and Gevura, both in full? So I'm going to have all light and no darkness, but I'm going to also have all darkness and no light, and I'm going to do that at the same exact time. That's called chaos. And it's not because there's no midos, it's because there are 2 opposing midos. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so just like Chesed and Gevura, so all the rest, they have their say. And all of them conflict with the other ones.
So they're not balanced in Tohu.
Right, there's no harmony. So what's the main principle of that world is the one thing that there's something that they have positive and there's something they have negative. What they have positive is that it's a little bit more true, because basically it's like a watered down, what do you call it when you settle? It's like a settlement,
Yes.
So when you settle, it's like one person can be totally justified, but because he wants to make peace, like he allows like a little bit of sheker to come to the world. Like we said, the word sheker has a shin in it, because any falseness, the shin is the letter of truth. You have a little truth inside of every sheker, because basically you're all right. I'm not gonna. Because why is it sheker? Because the light is not showing you what light really is. Light is mamish everywhere at all the times, and if in this world of Tikkun, I'm only a beam of light. It's like a dimming down of the reality, and so too darkness. That's not darkness; it's light. For crying out loud, there's light. You want to see darkness? I'll show you what I've really got. And Hashem has darkness, and He's not able to show His darkness in the world of Tikkun because of this pesky thing called peace, right? And basically coming together and allowing for everybody to have a little room in the party. So it's a tzimtzum of Hashem's true power of His midos to get into the world of Tikkun. So Tohu is in a certain sense more accurate depiction of the midos. But so on that level, it has something going for it that Tikkun doesn't have, and that's why Esav and Haman that come from there, they're stronger because they have like the real McCoy. But what they don't have is the notion of unity. That's why it's called chaos. That's what the real word chaos means in this, is the absence of unity. Because basically it's every man for themselves, every midah for themselves. And even though it's an accurate depiction of Hashem's midos, because Hashem's midos are infinite, you lose the fact that Hashem is none of these midos. He's like some kind of an underlying force which is beyond all the midos, and only when the midos will contain themselves and get along can you able to see beyond them that they're all being operated by a oneness and a force which contains them all.
Yeah.
So basically it's like a trade-off. You either have the power of Hashem's midos or the unity of Hashem. So in the world of Tohu you lose the unity of Hashem. But you see much more powerful. That's what we were saying before. It's the idea of an infinite, but it's chitzonius. Going back to this concept, it's not the true panemius intention of Hashem because you lose the oneness. So it's like this massive power that the wicked draw from, and therefore they can overstep the bounds of Kedusha and take things that don't belong to them. But it's chitzonius because it's not the real Hashem, because it doesn't show the unity, and therefore if you can connect to the panemius, you can ultimately just knock them over because there's something much more powerful than them, which is God is one. And that's found specifically in Bnei Yisrael. Even though officially we're weaker, we have that one little thing going for us that we preserve Hashem's unity, and therefore that can overcome any Goliath in the room. Because basically, that's the real inner intention of Hashem to reveal the midos in the first place. He's trying to show His unity. So therefore, that's what, going back to this conversation about the chitzonius and the panemius, it's a little bit more clear now what it means. All that power is chitzonius, because it doesn't show Hashem's true inner point, which is that He is one. And all of that is just a reflection of His oneness.
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks for that question. So going on, let's try and wrap it up. So therefore we see that they're brothers, it's his chaver, the bird, and the friend of the bird is basically Sag and Ma, or Tohu and Tikkun. And what makes them brothers? Because they both have 7 midos, basically. V'tochen Hamana shel Chavero. And what is the friend of the bird really saying? The friend is really Za of Atzilus. He's saying like this: Ani amarti lashmidam kiviyach v'lo yachalti. He's saying, I tried to destroy them, but I wasn't able to. Right? That's what the friend says. Remember? Shenemar v'yomer lashmidam lule Moshe b'chira v'amar b'peret lefanav lashiv chamaso ma'ashchis. As it says that Hashem wanted to destroy them if it was not for Moshe, His chosen one, who stood up at the breach and returned Hashem's anger. V'ata amarta, and you want to destroy them. He's saying in Shak, Hainu shagam kasher pagu b'nei Yisrael b'zad atzilus. So why did Hashem want to destroy them? Right? What is that? I wanted to destroy them, but I couldn't. And this is Zah talking. Why would Zah want to destroy us? Who do we have if we don't have Zah? Right? It means that we can blemish Zah. Right? What is Zah? Zah is the midos of Kedusha. Zah is basically the Torah. Which means that Zah says, if you do the mitzvahs, I will give you everlasting life. And if you don't, I'm going to destroy you. That Zah is not necessarily our friend in the ultimate sense of the word, because it's a conditional relationship. It has midos. The midos is the justice system. So that's what means Zah wanted to destroy us. According to, when did Hashem want to destroy us? When we broke the Torah. Right? So Zah jumped in. There's a midah of din. And the midah of din is allowed to act when the Torah is disobeyed. So Zah says, the friend says, I wanted to destroy them and I couldn't even do it. Because even when the Jewish people are blemishing Zah of Atzilus, Kamosha Kasuv, HaPoshim Bi, Begufa Damalka, those who rebel against me, the body of Hashem, it's considered Hashem, that world of Zah. Because it's like the man sitting on the chariot, that's Zah. Shalachein Bikash La'amit Lashmidam, Bikesh Lashmidam, he wanted to therefore destroy us, because he blemished the body of Hashem, as it were. Mikom makom lo hayachol kiviyachol. He couldn't do it to us. Lefisha Moshe b'chirav amar b'peretz lefanav lashiv chamasu me'ashchis. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, here comes our hero. Moshe didn't let. Right? It's amazing. Now you can see what it means. That Hashem wanted to destroy, and Moshe didn't let. Who's in charge over here? Because we see what level of Hashem we're talking about. Right? We're talking about Zah. When it comes to Zah, Moshe has a word on the matter. Moshe's higher than Zah. Why? Because Moshe minamayim mishisiyu. Moshe comes from the water, right? It's like a much higher level. The Alter Rebbe says in Torah Or that represents Tohu, and really it says elsewhere from beyond. And he drew from the 13 midos of mercy, right? That's what he was given when he basically secured the forgiveness. Hashem showed him the 13 attributes of mercy because that's what he knocked on. What are the 13 attributes of mercy again? That's basically Hashem's Yisa Panav, Hashem's favor. That's what that is. The 13 attributes of mercy is going to that level where Hashem just sort of favors us for no reason. And that's going beyond Tohu and Tikkun. Right? So even though in this sort of realm of the Seder Ishtalshus we had reason to be undone, but when you go to the Shem Av, which is where these 13 attributes of mercy come from, it's the Penimius. Since we have this little thing where we are humbled and want to show Hashem's unity, that is able to draw upon the essence, and He draws down mercy for us. But Kefisha Marich Admar Marash B'Divrei Maschil Vayivez Beinav, the Rabbi Marash has also a mimer on this same pasuk, and goes on and on about that. Shesham maybe gam mimer a medrash. He also brings the whole medrash that we're discussing. Bebir inyano shel Moshe Rabbeinu shemahafach merira lemitka, that he basically was able to transform bitterness into sweetness, mechashuchel and nahora, and from darkness into light. Right? He's able to basically. That's what the 13 attributes of mercy accomplish. And how is he able to do it? Because he draws from a very, very high place, where it's called Atik, which is basically another word for Av, as far as we're concerned right now. And he's saying that what is the deal with that? Lay small Atik. I know we're basically running out of time, but what can I do? I'm going to finish it. So he says there's no left in that Atik, right? Lay small Atika means there's no left side in that place called Atik. So what does it mean? It's kind of a whole deep thing. But in short as we can make it, the idea is, where does this justice system come in, right? In Ma, there's the notion of, as we said, you can blemish it, and then the Midah of Din will arouse itself and come down and punish, right? So the whole idea of right and left is basically infinite and finite, right? Another way of looking at it is basically, Gavul and Bli Gavul. It's like there's this notion of the letters versus the light, the vessels versus the light. That's basically where right and left come from in their very source. You with me? So the truth of the matter is that in the vessels, they become more and more and more and more real as they get lower and lower. Like we give the analogy all the time, the difference between letters of thought, letters of speech, and letters that you write. It's the same aleph. It's just that when it comes out on a piece of paper, it's mamish like a thing. You can wave it around in the air. When it's in your brain, it's ruchnius, right? So too the vessels, so to speak, which create the midah of din and create if you cross over my lines, I'm going to punish you. That's the midah of din. Those vessels, they in their root of roots, they're basically invisible. And they go to a place where even though they're there, and they're there in full, but they're there in a way we call an existence which is not really existence. Metzias bilti, metzias nikeres, right? It's an existence which is not really there. And the best way of understanding this, and the analogy is brought, is the notion of the letters that were inside of the luchos, the 10 Commandments. It says that you looked at them, and they were miraculous letters. You could see from both sides, basically, and it read forward, because they were carved all the way through. And nonetheless, it read sort of miraculously as though no matter what angle you looked at it, it read normally. What's the deal with these letters? These are letters of air. They're not letters like a parchment of Torah where you write ink on parchment and the letter has thingness to it where you can scratch it off. The letter is a non-entity. And the luchos were given with these letters to teach us a very deep lesson, that at that level of the luchos, which is again sort of this aleph, the Torah of Mashiach, right? The letters have no metzias to them. So even though we're not negating Hashem's ability to be finite, but there's no harsh dinim to them, because there's no real, you don't come up to any space. And that's what it means in the level of Atik, there's right and left, But we say there's no left over there. Because the left is it does not protrude, it doesn't get in the way of the light. It's like the Or Ein Sof can shine infinitely, and even though there's letters, the letters are like air. So they do not stop the Or Ein Sof from being in every single place. They don't limit, there's no din. And therefore Moshe was able to go to such a place, and since all the Gevuros come from that place, all vessels essentially come from that place. The only thing is, they come down through the Seder Ishtalshelus, you see less and less of their miraculous sort of disappearing act, and you see them in their harsher, more concrete form, so that's when negative things actually happen. They actually block the light from shining. But in their source, they don't ever block the light from shining. There's like a power that Hashem has, which is also kindness. So since Moshe is able to reach up into that source, it's called sweetening the Gevuras. You show the Gevuras what they really are in their source. They're not something which has the power to block light. They themselves are part of Hashem. So he's able to go up there and basically harness that level of the Gevuras. He can therefore undo their negative quality upon the Bnei Yisrael, which is their ability to punish us because we cross over their boundaries. He brings a place where they're boundaryless. And this is what it means that Moshe was able to go up to the source. Because remember, where does the name Av come from? Before the Tzimtzum. Before the Tzimtzum is what makes the vessels appear and the lights disappear. So before the Tzimtzum, it's all light still. And Moshe was able to go up there and harness from there this level of forgiveness. That's what the 13 attributes of mercy come from. That's a lot of words there and a big concept. And we're out of time. But what can I tell you? I'm doing my best. You know what? I don't know. It's just like, yeah, I'm going to finish it because just whoever has to go, who's not in the yeshiva, go. And this is what it means, the last page, that his friend said to him, She'im zad atzilus, chaveru shel tohu. If the zad atzilus, who's the pal of Tohu, as we said, right, who Tohu itself is the source of Haman, if Zah lo haya yachol lashmidam, if Zah wasn't able to destroy them, because the second the Midah of Din opened its mouth, Moshe Rabbeinu drew down the 13 attributes of mercy and silenced it. Then how much more so Haman couldn't do it? The bird had no power, especially as it is down below. It's not in its real source of Tohu itself. It's a fallen state of Tohu down in this world. If even the Midah of Mamish Gevura of Atzilus couldn't undo the Jewish people, then the lowered state of Haman in this physical world, who's just a remnant of his power of Tohu, you really think you know how effective you are? You're gonna dry up the sea by throwing a little bit of dirt into it. Like you're just an idiot thinking you can have the power of the Jewish people. This was the last question that we discussed in the beginning. The Midrash ends by saying, by your life, your head will be lifted in place of theirs. Right? And we said basically, you're going to be hung, they're going to be saved. And then one of the questions we had was, why does it say, Dafka, your head will be lifted instead of theirs? Why the head? Because the whole claim and strength that Haman had is from the standpoint of his shorish and his root, which is basically his head, right? Just like we say, by the way, by Esav, that his head went to the Maris Machpelah. But the idea is that he was saying, I'm the head, I'm the Bechor. That was his whole claim. You should be bowing down to him because your grandfather bowed down to my grandfather because we're stronger than you. Our head is raised higher than yours. It's a Tohu that came before Tikkun. We say, excuse me, sorry pal, you're not even the head. Your claim is that you're the head, you're only from Sag. You never heard of Av before. Right? That's the real head. The real source and root of everything is the Jewish people are up there in Av. Why? Because that's the Panemius. And even though when we fall, you look like you're stronger than us because you're in Tohu and we're in Tikkun, the truth of the matter is, behold, I will save them even from a distance. Even though it looks like I'm very far away and in a state of infinite distance from the world, it's like, who cares? Even at that level, I will save them, Dafka, from a distance, because I have these 13 attributes of mercy that have their name on them. L'chein inun l'shizva, therefore they're going to be for salvation, for atzala, from all the gezeros, shel kol hakamim aleim, anyone who stands up to them, el Yehudi ma'asa'ora v'simcha v'zasum vikar kein tiyalanu. Chazak
Yeah.
yeah.